You're listening to the Two Tongues Podcast. And now your hosts, Kyle and Chris.
Well, buongiorno. Welcome all to another episode of the Two Tongues Podcast.
Miss Goozy.
Miss Goozy. How's everything going, man?
Everything's fantastic.
Everything is fantastic. It was a beautiful day
here
in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a beautiful Ohio day.
You have any idea how warm it got here?
I would guess 73.
Yeah. So there's a huge disparity between what the car said it was, 85,
Oh, wow.
and what the weather app on my phone said it was, 66. So I think the truth is somewhere in the middle.
66, huh?
Yeah.
It seemed way warmer than that.
It did seem way warmer than that. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like starting off the podcast talking about the weather, you know?
Well, I have a tremendous amount of stress lifted off my shoulders recently. I got to spend the weekend with my folks, which was nice. I don't get to see them very much anymore.
Great, yeah.
Did I tell you my grandma started listening to the podcast?
Oh, really?
Yeah. My sweet 90-year-old grandmother. And so now I feel extra insecure about swearing and
dirty talk,
saying things, and getting too off the wall with religious topics.
Oh yeah.
When she asked me, as it came up in conversation, she asked me to send her the podcast, and I was like, oh geez. Mm-hmm. So there's probably some things in there I don't want her to hear, but I sent her the one where I was the most blasphemous. Is like what I think my grandma might stumble upon and be the most critical of is the episode I did called "Is Jesus the Only God Man?"
Oh,
so yeah. I just sent her that one.
Hot takes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, your grandma's a very Christian woman. So
yeah. And she called me. I think she might have butt dialed me or something.
Yeah.
But she called me, and I called her. I think I called her back. I can't remember. And she said, "Oh, I'm shopping right now, but I've been listening to your podcast, and I have some things. I have some things to say to you." And she's like, "I don't have time right now. I'm shopping." I was like, "All right, you call me back whenever you have time, Grandma." Yeah. So it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say.
When was that?
A couple days ago.
Yeah.
Haven't heard from her.
Hadn't had any time in between now and then. She's still listening to it. Like,
I'm hoping she's still shopping. And
she's just been shopping.
This whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your grandma will probably like me. I'm pretty Christian at this point,
Yeah.
Hi, Grandma.
Hey, Grandma. Shout out to Grandma.
Yes, indeed.
How about you? What's going on with you? What's new?
Well, all my grandparents are dead. Thanks for bringing it up, dude.
Yes.
Oh, is that not what you meant?
Nope.
Oh,
it is now, though. Lord, I apologize.
No, things are going good, man. It's been an exciting week. Lots of work. That's not really that exciting though. But I guess moderated that debate on the Crucible.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
And then I just did an episode with Jason and Matt on 2-Bit. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to listen to that. I did listen to a little bit of I listened to much of the moderated debate, and then you were doing something live. What was that? That was the one that with Matt? No. Yeah.
I did one by myself. I think it was this week about the Crucible. Yeah, so it had to have been because it was after the Crucible debate. That was about modding that debate, and then I talked about that OnlyFans girl who is gone Christian.
Yeah, what did you have to say about her? Skeptical, or are you one of those?
I mean, I'm happy to give. I've said this a bunch of times at this point. I'm happy to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm not one of these people who's like, she's definitely faking it. She might be. I don't know, but she seemed sincere enough for me. I watched the whole 2-hour interview that she did with Michael Knowles.
Yeah.
And she definitely. I don't want to. Yeah. Whatever. She seems like she's from a branch of Christianity that I am not. I would never go to that kind of a church.
What, like a Universalist church or something?
I don't know the details of it. Okay. All I know is that she said that she walked in off the street and got baptized. It's like, that's not happening in a Catholic church or an Orthodox church. Certainly, or, even like a Lutheran church.
Yeah.
It might happen quicker at a Lutheran church than the other two, but there's like hoops you got to jump through,
Yeah.
you know? And I don't think that's a bad thing. But I do think that I'm willing to take her word that she is a Christian and that this isn't like some cynical, you know?
Yeah.
But her actions will tell.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm an optimist. I like to see the best in people.
Yeah.
I like to pretend like I can see the best in people. So I'm hopeful, that all that is legit. The worst case scenario is that she's like brilliant in a whole other level, where she sees a market out there for what do you call them, trads and conservative Christian folks, and she's
kind of what the episode that I did on 2-Bit was about.
Oh, that's what you were circling
Jason's
around.
got this like neo-trad apple pie theory is what he calls it. I mean, one of those two, not both of them at the same time generally. But it's like this idea that as soon as people realize that the woke ideology is not serving them, they'll drop it like a hot potato and they're going to pick up whatever is trending, and what seems to be kind of trending, is, kind of like a very shallow version of conservatism.
And how does that manifest itself? What am I not seeing on the internet that you're referring to right now? Yeah, Jesus, shut up,
that
Spring.
Was startling.
God, I just nipped a spring with my thumb and it just.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
I said, how is this neo-trad thing manifesting itself? You're saying it's sort of like half-heartedly. I'm picturing hipsters or something. It's
lots of people online posting videos about how they're, baking cakes and cleaning their houses and wearing pretty dresses and all that sort of thing. And, claiming to be Christian. And again, happy to give people the benefit of the doubt, even if they're not like, I don't know. I was going to say on the same level as me, but that is not how I mean it at all. I just mean, I just feel like that they don't really take Christianity that seriously.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, it's a handbag,
Yeah.
And as soon as that handbag is not trendy anymore, just like the woke ideology, right into the bin, as the English folks say.
So you think that's genuinely, largely a fad?
I don't know, man. It seems like everything kind of is, like sometimes people will find their way to like the real thing, but a lot of times people, it's just like kind of a fad.
Experiment for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but I guess just the fascinating thing to me is the idea that that being a 1950s style white husband or wife is trendy in the way that like sagging your pants was trendy in the 1990s, in the early 1990s.
That's like that's weird for you.
Yeah, it's kind of I would never have anticipated. I never would have been able to suggest that this would come about. It never would have occurred to me. Yeah.
It's not that big of a surprise to me because it just seems like everything is kind of cyclical, like everything.
Yeah, but
that was once popular becomes popular again.
That's true, but I just never thought of it. I never thought that.
You thought of it as like clothes, like those parachute pants are coming back.
But maybe that's what these neo-trad people are doing.
There is some
it's just the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like you say, shallow.
A good example of that is Andrew Wilson from the Crucible goes on those whatever dating podcasts, and recently he's been getting into it with a lot of women who claim to be Christians, and it's like the same thing. It's like it's like a very shallow, weird version of Christianity where everything is, like go and sin no more. Jesus said that. They concentrate on the salvation, the forgiveness, and that's good. That's like that's the main point of it. But also you have to try to live a Christian life. If you don't, that's not how it works really.
What do you think a Christian life is?
Trying not to sin, striving to be as, it's like the idea of theosis. You try to become as close to God as possible. And you do that through doing the things that are laid out in the Bible and by the church fathers and things like that. not sinning,
Yeah.
going to church,
I wonder how much.
taking communion.
Okay. I wonder how much of that parallels the that sort of legalistic way that the Old Testament is interpreted, and like many Jewish people interpret the faith. Is like, I know it's not a direct parallel because we're talking about Judaism and Christianity here, but if I were to say to be Christ-like means to live my life according to the Ten Commandments, right, or according to the law in general,
Yeah.
And
Well,
if I can manage to do that, then
I mean, so like I said, the forgiveness is like kind of the main part of it, So, the most important commandment, the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself,
Yeah.
So, that's that kind of stuff. I think is important. If you don't try to do the things that you were told to do, you're like taking a gift and not appreciating it at all. We're all going to fail without question. We're all going to fail.
Yeah.
But if you just are like, I'm saved, and you just go do whatever you want to, you're not taking that seriously at all.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. Like there's a part of me that wants to push back and have an argument that maybe we've had many times already, but I don't really believe it. I don't really believe it myself. But what was in the back of my mind was this notion that that Christianity overturns Judaism. Jesus himself overturns Judaism when he there's a couple of places where he talks about the law says this, but I say this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where he clearly sasays, I know this is what God told us to do, but what I'm telling you is like this is what that means.
Yeah.
And yet we're holding you to a higher standard. Like God said that you shouldn't commit adultery. I say, if you think about it, even if you think about it, you're just as guilty as the person who goes and does it. And the idea to me is something like, you will never be capable of keeping the law perfectly, right? That's alludes back to what you were talking about, how salvation is the biggest part of the Christian message. It's like, no matter how good you are, you're not perfect enough that you can stop yourself from having a dirty thought about a sexy lady. You're not that good. So your soul is tainted like everybody else's. And so, the interpretation to me of that is that the law is symbolic in some way.
Yeah. So there's this story where Jesus and his disciples are walking through, they're walking like you do back then.
Yep.
In their sandals
Their
and their robes. Yeah. They're walking somewhere, and they're walking through a wheat field, and the disciples like pull some wheat heads off, and they like do this and get the seeds out, and they eat the wheat, and I guess some Pharisees are also in this field, and they say, it's Sabbath, you can't do that. They're like chastise, they're always trying to get Jesus on something, and he's like, he says to them, he asked them if they remember the story about David, and him and his men had been like traveling a long time, and they go into a temple and they eat the showbread, which is a big no-no,
I'm sure. Yeah.
But, David was like, God told me I could. I forget what exactly he says. But Jesus like cites that, and he's like, he says that basically it boils down to the spirit of the law. Excuse me, I need to take a drink here.
What's your whistle, Kyle?
The spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law,
Yeah.
If enforcing the laws is going to cause someone to like starve to death, you don't enforce the laws. You have mercy.
Yeah, totally. Because I think that's exactly what Jesus was doing in that example I brought up. Is he was saying, I know the law says this, but what it means is this. Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. It's interesting because I wanted to talk about Orthodoxy and the religion of the future. It ties back to something that comes up in here. But before I jump into that, I wanted to ask you more about your debate moderation experience.
Yeah.
So I listened to a bunch of it. I didn't finish it.
It's a long one. They all,
Yeah.
Crucible runs long.
Yeah. I listened to a bunch of it. I have some of the same criticisms of that episode that I have of all of them that I've watched.
Andrew being
basically,
mean.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would say that I want to use those words.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that the guy he had on, what was his name?
Octavio.
Yeah.
From the Solutions podcast.
First of all, it seems like a nice guy.
I mean, yeah, he seems like a nice enough guy.
But it was clear that that he was outclassed as far as just debating
I don't think he's done
experience.
that many debates.
Right, outclassed. And you could tell that he hadn't considered more than his message. He hadn't considered like what was going to be said against his arguments. And I've seen this happen. I haven't watched a bunch of them, but the few that I've watched, I've seen this happen where they get stuck in a little bit of a loop, and there's a little bit of a grinding down that's happening. That's hard for me to watch, because it's like he wasn't being nasty, but he still got ground down. Still got ground down, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was your thoughts of the experience? Did you enjoy it? Would you do it again?
I liked it. I would definitely do it again. I thought it was a lot of fun. I've watched a bunch of Crucible debates, so it was cool to be
that guy.
It was pretty sweet. I didn't interact with Octavio very much, but he did seem like a nice guy.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about his argument for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I got to pull this out of the vault now. What he was saying was that the degeneracy among young in the sex work industry in the modern day, with OnlyFans specifically, that came up. It's become so easy for them to do this, and also so lucrative for them to, if I can simplify it and say, sell their bodies or something.
Yeah.
That a lot of women are tempted to do it. And there's a lot more women doing it than ever before as a consequence. And what Octavio, was that his name, Octavio? What he was saying was that he believed the fault lies more on the men than on the women in the context of this particular problem.
Depending on when you catch him, it's that men are more responsible than women. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's men are responsible, Yeah.
And the argument that he was trying to make, and like I said, maybe this was Andrew accepted more of this deeper into I don't really know. But the argument he was trying to make is that the reason why he holds men more accountable than the women actually doing it is because the men are the ones purchasing it. And if they weren't purchasing it, it wouldn't exist. Then he also added to that, men are leaders and women are followers. And it was hard for me to hear that. Every time he said women are followers, I was like, well, like I could just see the mean tweets coming. I could see the feminist uprising.
Yeah, but who gives a shit?
Right. I think there was another way of saying that maybe wouldn't have been so, but like you say, who gives a shit? The point he was trying to make was what he said. And what he said was, according to a biblical worldview, a man is the leader of the house.
Yeah.
And the woman is supposed to support her husband. That means following him and supporting him. And he said it in a way that was not as articulate as he might have, but that's the point he was making.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I don't think Andrew, at least from what I listened to, took that point very seriously. Like, he didn't really address that point. Does that matter? I wonder if it matters to him at all when Octavio says that the man's role is to lead and he should be setting an example so that his daughters and his wife would never do this.
Yeah.
I have a hard time thinking Andrew would disagree with that, you know?
Did you get to the part where I interjected?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I interjected and I said, Octavio, would you be comfortable admitting that Andrew has agreed with you that men have their responsibility? And, he's agreed to it several times because they just kept doing this fucking loop,
Mm-hmm.
And Octavio said yes. And I was like, is there anything else that we can move this onto? And I mean, they really still didn't. They like hashed it out a couple more times,
Yeah. It's pretty much that same loop the whole time.
Yeah. No, Andrew doesn't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that men definitely have their share of responsibility, but look around the world. Like, who does it seem like the world society at large is easier on men right now, men or women. It seems to me like men get like the short end of the stick on pretty much fucking everything.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's like, yes, we need to hold men responsible without question. And I try to. I talk pretty frequently about how I think that men are just as big a mess as women. Maybe not just as big, but close.
Yeah.
Or maybe just as big. I don't fucking know.
Maybe there's some real problems with masculinity in general.
Oh yeah, and there's.
I don't mean that in a feminist way. I mean that men aren't being men.
Yeah. And it's a product of like feminization of society through feminism, and it's like women think that they're men. Men are starting to behave like women. It's all kinds of fucked up. I
think there's some truth in that, yeah.
But so I'm happy to admit all of that men need to do better. I myself, I'm not putting it out on men. It's like I need to do better for sure. I'm trying,
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't even seem to be fucking trying,
Yeah, no, for sure.
But with all that being granted, women have their responsibility too.
Oh yeah.
And the state of women, and see, like, I don't like talking like this necessarily because I don't think that it's all women. I think that when you watch these whatever dating podcasts, that's not representative of most women,
Yeah.
Now, I do think that most women are less virtuous than they were 50, 60 years ago,
Yep.
Like the amount of women who are virgins on their wedding day is very small.
Yeah, like almost none.
Yeah. And I don't think that's good.
No. I did see a clip of that whatever podcast, and it was the clip was now it just came up on Twitter, I think a little while ago. It was a couple of girls. They asked, I can't remember the whole thing, but they said, how would you feel if you found out your boyfriend had slept with a man?
Oh yeah,
and the girls were like, no. I would not be okay with that at all. That's so gross. I would leave him immediately. And then he just looks at the girls and he's like, have you ever considered that's how we feel? Yeah, you've slept with a bunch of guys. That's how we feel when we find that shit out. Yeah. Exactly like you just felt like that, there you go. I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah.
I do kind of hate that show. I mean, nothing against Brian Atlas. I think he's pretty funny. Yeah. I like his attitude and his takes, but that show's infuriating to watch.
Yeah, like libs of TikTok. I think it's important to hold a mirror up to it, though. It's important that somebody does it.
Yeah.
People need to see, these women need to see what it looks like and sounds like when they're answering these questions. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't care, but they will.
And one of the points that Andrew kind of got to making later in the debate was that older women need to speak out against this kind of stuff, and they don't, man. Like older women are just as bad as the younger women a lot of the time,
So I had this when you said that, this memory popped in my head of my last life, my first marriage, and
this life.
Yeah. Just drinking beer is making me burpy, fellas. This is Peroni. This is from, can you see this?
Italia.
This is from Italia. Turns out my dad used to be a big drinker, and after his cancer treatment and all that, he totally couldn't drink alcohol anymore. For a while, he was drinking like he used to drink beer,
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, he was drinking like Mike's Hard Lemonades, and that's all he could really do. Mm-hmm. And he comes to the house today, and he was like, Jessica bought a case of Peronis, and he was like, I had one of those one time. I have never been able to find them anywhere in stores or in restaurants, and it was the only fucking beer I can drink. And I was just like, it was just the greatest coincidence. So me and my dad had a Peroni together.
It's crazy that your dad can't find Peroni. It's crazy.
He does live in Chillicothe now.
Oh yeah,
so
true.
It's not a sophisticated lot there. They don't buy much. They don't import much from Italia.
Yeah.
Sorry, where was I going? What did I say before I started talking about beer? Shit. Talked about
last thing I remember you saying was that you thought it was a good idea to hold a mirror up to like the whatever stuff.
Yeah. I do think that. I do think that. Yeah. Oh shit. Oh, the memory of my ex-wife.
Oh yeah.
So,
right.
So, I can't remember what it was that happened. It was like an argument between us or something, which was like fucking par for the course, as you recall.
Yeah. It's like 90% of your life.
But it was something that I thought of anybody around, her grandmother who was around, would understand and would be on my side. And it was something like that. I can't remember, but something old timey that I thought, oh, this woman is going to side with me.
Yeah.
And so I looked at her and I'm like, can you believe this? And she just looked at me like, yep, I can believe this. You're in the wrong. This old gray haired woman was like, you know, I expected her to be more conservative.
I wish you could remember what the issue was. I mean, you know,
it had something to do with her role as my wife, you know.
Yep.
Well, she didn't take particularly seriously.
Yeah.
So anyway, the matriarchs, the idea of the matriarchs, you know, they're supposed to be keeping people in line.
Just like older men are supposed to do with younger, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do think there's like there's been a slow degradation of respect in general, in particular elder. Like I heard a little hearing like on repeat as a mantra, as a disciplinary mantra, respect your elders, you know, respect your elders. I never fucking understand it because I also heard all kinds of things about, you know, whether you have to earn respect, right? Or do you just give it, or does it have to be earned? Meanwhile, respect your elders, like even if they're an asshole, it doesn't matter. And
does that seem contradictory to you?
Not now, you know. And now my perspective is that you know, an elderly person has earned my respect in ways I'll never know because of their life experience.
I see what you're saying.
But then I didn't. I was like, you know. But the point is, even that message, I don't think the last few generations have ever heard that. You know, respect your elders. And even if they did hear that, and the kids say why, I don't think their parents are capable of answering that question anymore.
Yeah.
Why is respect important? And if you don't respect your elders, how are the matriarchs and patriarchs going to get through to you? Especially when you're young and you're hot-headed and you think you fucking know everything.
That's why it's fixing things is going to be a slow process, man. It's like, I think that like earlier where we were talking about things going in cycles, you know, it's like the boomers were raised by a generation that was more conservative, more traditional, more like demanding that respect of your elders, you know, and they resented it. So they changed the culture. And now people are starting to see, oh, that was a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah. But it just takes time, you know?
Makes me think these cycles, like we were talking about cycles, fashion, just specifically fashion. Like I remember when we were teenagers, girls wearing bell bottoms again. For a while there was bell bottoms. It's like, oh, that's what, you know, those girls' parents wore in the 70s. It's like fashion turns a little bit more quickly. And then this whole neo-trad thing, that goes back to the 50s, right? So that took a lot longer to circle back around. Yeah. Like some things seem like they circle back around more quickly. Some things seem like they take a long time.
I wonder how much of that is like manipulated, you know, like they try to hold something like, no, don't be into that. You know, that was bad. And I mean, you think about where we've been for the last 10, 15 years, people have been shitting all over like the 1950s American culture, you know, that's like, that's bad. That's homophobic. That's, you know, misogynistic.
True.
And now we're like, I could go for a little misogyny, you know?
Yeah.
A little misogyny sounds nice.
But there's also like really like attractive pop culture associations with the 50s also. Like,
oh yeah,
like I don't know, like some James Bond stuff pops up in my head.
Happy Days comes to mind, even though it's not from that time.
Yeah,
from, you know, but it was set in that time.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to watch Nick at Night. So for those people old enough to know, before TV Land was a channel, which probably isn't even a channel anymore. That's how old I am. Nick at Night was Nickelodeon for kids. At a certain point in the evening, became Nickelodeon for fucking old people. And I don't, was it Nickelodeon? I think it was. Yeah, Nick at Night. Yeah. I used to love it.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't wait for fucking Black and White to come on at the end of the night. I'm like, give me some Bewitched. I want some I Dream of Jeannie. They played Welcome Back, Kotter, which wasn't as old, but I fucking loved Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah.
I watched. Go ahead. I just watched all those shows. I Love Lucy. Fucking loved I Love Lucy.
I would watch Bewitched and stuff like that on occasion, but I never. I was not like you. I was not like looking forward to Nick at Night.
I'll tell you, fucking I Love Lucy is. Listen, I Love Lucy is a mindless sitcom, just like any number of mindless sitcoms. But if you give it a chance, if you watch a couple of episodes of I Love Lucy, you could just binge it. You would laugh. You could easily get into Lucy Arnaz, man.
Yeah, I had to give it a shot.
I'm telling you. What? But the reason I brought up the Nick at Night stuff is that I thought that was very classy. You know, like the way they dressed.
Oh yeah.
You know, and the cars they drove.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that reminded me of my mom's dad, my grandpa. You know, like just like Can I Dream of Jeannie? It was like a military man, so he was always wearing like military blues.
Dapper.
Yeah, man. Just like even the furniture and stuff, like that mid-century modern. So just something about that has always seemed sexy to me, man. And like something about it is like the whole like aesthetic. It's like there's like. Go ahead.
So I agree with you. And if you find like that piece of furniture, that cool ass chair from the 50s, if you pick it up, it's heavy.
Yes.
It's like made of something. You know?
Yes.
So like, I think a good, what's the word? Like a good analogy or something, some kind of word that I'm looking for that I can't come up with for that is that for like the neo-trad thing, it's like, they're going to make chairs that look like that now, but they're going to be thin and you're going to sit on them and they're going to break and it's not going to be made of anything, you know? And I think that is a good analogy. I think that's
it's symbolic of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're totally right, man.
But I do agree with you. All that stuff, the design, and it just looks so much more. It's got so much more character than the stuff that we make now. Yeah. Everything we make now is like flat and straight lines. And I mean, I guess that can be cool in its own way sometimes, but
I was just telling my folks before they left early this afternoon, some of the furniture, like kind of a lot of the furniture in the house we got from a church. Like it's a secondhand furniture store that's fundraising for some ministry. But we bought both of the dressers that are in my kids' rooms. They're solid wood, awesome fucking dressers that you would spend easily, $800 for today, and it wouldn't be as good. Yeah. And I paid like $70 for one of them. The solid wood tables and side tables I have in my living room, same thing. I spent like a song on them, and they're solid, and you cannot buy that. And then
you just keep it that thing. Man.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use like a musical instrument. Then I have one that I bought recently. It sits underneath the TV in the front room, and it's just like like a narrow table. It was like designed to hold DVDs when people still had DVDs. I still have fucking Blu-rays in there, and DVDs. It's a piece of shit, man. There's like a little bit of water damage. I don't know what it was, a cup sitting up there or something. And it's like cracked the whole, shiny, like thin veneer of like, that makes it look like it might be a decent piece of furniture. Underneath it's just particle board. Yep. Golly, they suck so bad. Yep. It's like the best you can get.
It's crazy, man. Everything's cheap Chinese,
disposable. Everything's disposable.
Yeah.
Furniture, man.
Yeah, man. It's sad. But who knows? Maybe we're taking a turn. It's like, I think that maybe faking it will cause some people to go in for the real thing. You know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah. I've been like working on, being on that podcast with Jason and Matt Jason from 2-Bit, Matt from King Build. That was an interesting podcast, man. I love listening to those guys talk on their own shows and together when they get together. And it was cool to be involved in that conversation. And I feel like I've had a bunch of times where it's like I have some feelings or some thoughts, and then one of those two guys says it, and I'm like, oh right, it seems like it makes sense, but
so I want to ask you about about that? I want to ask you about like how much opportunity you had to talk on that.
Well, at one point, Jason was like, "Kyle, don't be quiet."
Yeah, I remember.
Because he said that him and Matt, they can both go. They both can go.
Yeah,
man. It's impressive.
It's hard to find a place to jump in.
Yeah,
it's like you're playing double dutch with experts. You're trying to
particularly. What makes it hard for me? I think that people, they just get more practice talking to people online like that. Is that it's hard to know like when somebody is stopping, and if you start talking, it's like it makes like the audio kind of like. Oh, I'm sure you can think of in the Crucible when they're both talking. It's like you can't fucking understand anything that's being said. So I don't want to cause that. But yeah, I definitely. I started talking more.
So I want to jump into that, but before I do, I have to say this phrase neo-trad.
Neo-trad.
I can't help but just I can back at the back of my mind just kind of smirking about that. Something about new labels I'm just suspicious of and don't just instinctively don't like.
Yeah, but think of it this way.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, like they had the other side had these new words and they stuck.
They do. Yeah,
they're like brainworms. They get in there. Mm-hmm. So I think that Jason's onto something.
Oh, was it something he coined?
Yeah,
neo-trad.
He's going by just trads now with a Z. Trads. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's good branding, man. He's good at it.
I'm imagining mostly women doing this fashionable trad thing. You think
no?
You think there's men out there with briefcases and?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't carry a fucking briefcase? I mean,
Yeah, I would carry a briefcase.
Yeah. So there's got to be other guys out there that would be happy to carry a briefcase.
But are there like when you see these?
Oh, I mean, I don't work in those I work in a fucking metal shop. Yeah. I was carrying a briefcase.
But like in the online world, are there men versions of these girls that with their dresses cooking and with their aprons on? Are there men on there talking about like chopping wood and like?
Well, most of the conservative kind of traditional values in men online comes more to do with like behavior, in terms of, just not being a whiny little woman of a man, and being not afraid to say what you mean.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I'll admit to something right now while you say that I feel like I could share with you right now. I'm such a nice guy.
You're in a safe space, man. Share whatever you want.
I'm such a nice guy that when people like cut in front of me in line, my instinct is to just let them.
Yeah.
And in the back of my head, I think to myself, you pussy, man. Like,
yeah.
So I was in the airport in Turks and Caicos. I was in the Caribbean, waiting to come home, and it was a terrible airport. It was a terrible experience. And there's this little shop in the airport. Like if you go to the airport in like the first world, there's like a whole area of restaurants and bars, and there's like
generally several. Because there's different whatever they're called terminals.
Yeah, terminals, right. And you expect like duty-free stores where you can buy alcohol, cigars, like hoodies for the city and their sports teams, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not at the Turks and Caicos, man. At the Turks and Caicos airport, it's one giant lobby.
Yeah.
All of the planes land right there. It's one giant lobby, and the places that are around for you to buy stuff from look like, that store in the mall that opens up right before the mall goes out of business, where it's like you can go in there and buy lottery and candy bars and 12-ounce sodas or whatever. It's like, what is that place in the mall? It's like that.
Yeah. And
I'm standing in there buying cans of beer, so me and my wife aren't going to effing kill ourselves waiting in this hot airport. And this woman, it was very busy. You couldn't even, if you were in line, you were in someone's way.
Yeah.
Okay. And so some woman comes in and she steps in front of me, and I thought she's just looking at the things. Next thing I know, she stays there, and I'm just like, well, I guess I'm one more person behind in line.
Yeah.
And some other woman in line, she was just like, she's like, hey, she's like, there's a line, and the lady was mortified. She had no idea. It looked genuine. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry. So she goes back to the end of the line. But anyway, there's something about this quality in me that I feel like it was appropriate at some point in my life, like when I was a child, and it isn't so appropriate anymore. And like I don't know, I feel like I want to scold myself a little bit for not interrupting that pattern and coming up with something new and more fitting for an adult man.
Yeah, you know, being aware is the first step, you know.
That it is.
But you know, I have a little bit of a confrontational streak. I come by it naturally.
Yeah.
My mom was very confrontational. You know, my grandpa was kind of in his own way, especially when he was younger. You know, but I do wonder, is it worth saying something? Like in that situation, that's kind of extreme. You're traveling, there's a huge line. But just like, let's imagine that it's like you're standing in line in an ice cream place, you know, and some people wander in and they cut you in line, and maybe they did it on purpose, but maybe they just really just, you know, they're kind of oblivious people, you know.
Yeah.
Is it like worth saying something and starting a fight to be like one person back in the line?
No,
you know?
No, I suppose not. But if there's 5 other people behind you, you've now let them cut them also, then suddenly it's compounding. Now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is what happened in that situation.
I was to work lunch break. I live very close to my work, so I go home sometimes. And I was on my way back, and I was stopped at a light, and there was a guy. I was in the right lane. This guy was in the left lane, and we both started going. And I like sped up and got in front of him because he wasn't like going super slow or anything, but I needed to make a fucking left turn, you know, and he wasn't going that fast.
Yeah.
So I got over and got in front. I sped up and got in front of him. He zooms around me, gets back in front of me.
Oh God.
Into the left lane, but there's a turning lane. So when we stop at the light, we're right next to each other. And I like, you know, I could have just not said anything.
Yep.
But I rolled down the window, and I wasn't like, fuck you, you stupid piece of shit. I was like, why? You know, it's like, I didn't like cut you off, you know, like why are you mad at me because you were going slow? That's what I said, because he was, his response was, I wasn't going slow. Like he was real mad about it. And he was like freaking out. So, you know, confrontational me, I say, okay, bundle of sticks. Okay, British cigarette.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So he's like, oh, British cigarette, huh?
Yeah.
And he's like, did you see my license plate? And I was like, no. And he pulls up and he's got this thing that says vet. You know, he's like a Marine or something like that. And he like threatens to kill me. Literally. He's like, I'll get out of this fucking car. And I was like, I mean, even in the face of that, I'm like, ooh, you know, I just can't. Sometimes I can't help myself when you're going to be that fucking stupid. But I kind of wish that I wouldn't have done that, you know?
Yeah. So I wouldn't have done that. If I was in that situation where I ended up neck and neck with a guy after he was a dick.
You just look forward?
No. I would look at him.
Yeah.
I would just look at him, you know?
Yeah.
Because first of all, I want to see what kind of person is this? Yeah. And also I want you to know that I know. And, but that's it. So that's kind of where I want to go. What kind of person was this? Was this a younger? I'm assuming
he was probably my age, somewhere, maybe a little bit older, but not much.
And a vet.
Yep. He looked like he was in good shape. He called me fat.
Oh, what a fucking!
I don't fucking care. Dude is obviously dumb. He's obviously dumb as a box of rocks. So it's like, who fucking cares? And I am fat, you know, less fat though.
Man, less fat.
But yeah, I mean, who fucking cares with this dipshit? Like, you're that mad, dude. Like, I said that to him at some point. It's like, I said this exactly. Look at yourself, man. You're like freaking out. You know, it's just silly.
So when you were moderating that podcast, that Crucible debate, did you learn anything? Was it different from just being a spectator?
So I personally like debates where the moderator stays out of it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And if that means that things get a little heated, I like that. That's fine. The only reason I stepped in once because they had been making the same fucking point over and over again. And I stepped in later because Andrew wouldn't let Octavio talk. You know, like Andrew gets like that. He gets going.
Yeah.
And but that was really it. That's all I interjected.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like it like that. It seemed like most of the chat was okay with my performance. Some people were bitching. They were like, "Do something," you know. But like I said, I like to stay out of it.
Do something. Well, tell me about the episode you did with Jason Ronchuk and Matt Erickson.
Yes, sir.
So you knew I was in there for a little while when you were live. I wish I could have stayed in there longer, but we have a certain routine in the evening, and it interfered. Yep. So anyway, what'd you guys talk about?
It was basically to kind of give a rundown of Jason's apple pie theory, the neo-trad thing.
Yeah.
And we just talked about that, and you know how this girl Nala that I did that episode on kind of fits into that, and you know, like
that's the OnlyFans girl with the cross eyes and the red hair.
Cross eyes.
You know, they do the orgasm eyes. Yeah.
I thought you meant she was literally.
Which is a weird thing.
It's like
that thing comes from anime, right? It comes from anime originally.
Yeah. I mean, hentai, I guess technically.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't. In the chat, this guy Trey, who I like, Trey's a good dude, but he was saying that's hentai, not anime. But it's like,
what is the difference?
Hentai is anime pornography, you know.
Yeah, seriously, what's the difference?
Hentai is explicitly sexual, anime is not.
Well, I mean,
seems to me like hentai is adult anime, you know.
When I was a kid, and like in the early days of anime that I was exposed to, it was manga was very sexual. Mm-hmm. You know,
I think of that show Eon Flux.
Yeah,
remember that show?
Yeah. I remember my cousin Luke had some crazy anime VHSs when I was a kid. He was older. He was a teenager. I was like 10 years old. I put one of those videos in. I was just going, this alien creature is having sex with this cartoon lady in a very, very sci-fi kind of way, Kyle.
Okay.
There's tentacles involved. There's
tentacles.
You know,
I knew the tentacles
graphic.
Yeah.
If you could see the images in my head right now, you'd be like, golly.
Oh,
man.
I've seen them. Why were we that girl's face. Yeah. That's who that is. And we talked about like how things are going to change, you know, what needs to happen. People need to take responsibility. I mean, with that Crucible debate, I feel like I don't want to say that I was in the middle. Because I do pretty much agree with Andrew. Like, men are responsible. I would even be comfortable saying men are more responsible, but women have their share of the responsibility too. You can't just absolve them of that.
No, of course.
And you can't be mad at Andrew for wanting to hold women's feet to the fire, you know, because nobody's fucking doing it.
Yeah.
So I do pretty much side with Andrew, but I think that men are responsible, and we can't wait for women to do anything about it, because if we do that, nothing's going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
They have no incentive to change things because things are like going well for them until they're not, you know?
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens.
Well, incentives drive behavior, and there's no doubt about it. And the people that are the most in danger of the OnlyFans catastrophe are young and naive. They're young and naive. And those girls don't know what it means, what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't even mean specifically the OnlyFans stuff. I mean, it's almost like some of the stuff that you were uncomfortable with in the debate, like the women are followers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's the truth, man. Like, it's gonna have to be the truth.
Yeah. And I guess the point I was making there is, if you agree with this sort of biblical worldview of the family structure, which I imagine Andrew does, then God damn it, quit that. Then you have to agree with Octavio to some degree when he says the man is the head of the house, and sets the tone and sets the rules and that sort of thing. And that means any female under him, whether that be his wife or his children, are his responsibility. Yeah. And if they're out there doing that stuff, then the man in that household is
smackdown.
Right. So does that make him? And this doesn't say anything about the girls with no fathers, because there's lots of those out there, but or no husbands. But the girls that do, is there some sort of special responsibility on the shoulders of the man of that house that
to lock it down?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's more responsibility. Maybe it is. I don't know.
He had whether it's more or anything. Take away the amount of who has how much responsibility. What you can say is he has a responsibility.
Yes.
So that's the truth. And one thing you said, like this biblical, and I do believe that it is biblical, and that's why I believe it's true. And not only that's why I believe it's true, that's why it's true. It's because it's from God. That's the order of things, But you don't even have to grant the complete worldview of Christianity to understand that is the way of nature, and that has always been the way of nature.
Sure.
So,
agreed.
It doesn't have to be it should be a religious thing, but it doesn't have to be. And we're completely astray from that path.
Yeah.
I
think that argument holds a lot more weight to me. Maybe it shouldn't, but I think part of that has to do with I grew up in the era where religiosity in the church was diminishing every day, and it was ingrained into me to some degree. I'm supposed to be one of these atheists. I was raised to be one of these atheists that I'm not. Well, where was I going with this?
You were talking about how you feel about the men with the headship, women followers.
I lost it. I was going somewhere particular with
talking about how you grew up affected the way you view that.
It certainly did, but it doesn't help me. It doesn't. I don't remember exactly where I was going.
So I was just thinking earlier. You forgot something that you were trying to say, and I want to. When we get better at video editing, I would like to go through and get all of them and edit them into one video. That would be hilarious.
I think you should. That would be funny.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about that.
Oh, I wanted to say something else. Oh, so you know how Octavio said if the men stopped consuming it, the porn, the women would stop making it because there would be no market for it.
It's true, but it's also like...
It's true, but it's also true the other way around.
Yeah,
if the women stopped making it, the men would stop consuming it because they wouldn't be available, right? It works both ways. But I wondered about this angle of from time to time we talk about that French Canadian fellow. What was his name again? The pseudo psychologist Stefan Molyneux.
I can't believe you don't remember good old Stefan's name.
Yeah,
man. How
yeah.
dare you?
It's been a long time. Where was I going with this? So
you motherfucker.
I had it for a minute there.
Stefan Molyneux.
Stefan Molyneux. We were talking about whether men, rather than saying I'm not going to consume the porn, if the men said
the porn,
I don't the porn. I don't want to date you if you do OnlyFans. Like if there was social consequences for women doing that, I'm just curious how effective you think that would be. If the woman is making a ton of money doing it, she's got all the positive incentives to do it. She's getting all kinds of, but then she can't get a date outside of work.
Did you listen far enough into that debate to where they were opened up for callers and whatnot?
No, I did not. That's the thing.
So they were opened up for callers, and in that portion, I actually asked Octavio a question. It's like, the way I started it was, because he's married. I said, if you and your wife have a disagreement, how do you enact this leadership that you're talking about? And he's like, oh, I wouldn't have to, just fucking, like, yes, men are supposed to be the leaders, but like, I would imagine that you still like take your wife's opinion into consideration, but not always, right. I don't.
Well, always. You wouldn't be a good leader with your wife. You always have. That doesn't mean you have to. You have to factor into what decision you make, but you do have to consider it before you make your decision. I
can agree with that.
Yeah.
But he's just being like, I wouldn't have to, and so that point didn't really sink in. But like, with your wife, you have leverage. You're married to her. You have a relationship. You provide for her. All of this stuff. If Octavio goes to Nala when she's making $85,000 fucking a month on OnlyFans, what kind of leverage does Octavio have to be a leader? I mean, it's like, why is she listening to you, Octavio?
Yeah. She's
not.
not. She's
Yeah.
not. She's not.
So it's, we need to lead women. You need to lead your woman. You need to lead your daughters. That's what you need to lead. That's what you should concentrate on. Be a leader in your church. Help the men in your church be leaders of their families. Show them how to do that. That's how you make a difference. You don't do it by lecturing a millionaire OnlyFans model, because it ain't going to help.
I tell you who's immune from the social pressure. The girls who have left their parents' house but haven't started considering marriage or having kids yet, like girls from the age of maybe like 22 to 27.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, man, try reaching those girls. How are you going to reach those girls? They don't give a shit.
Yep. And then when they start to give a shit, they're fucking in their 30s and they've been ran through, and, guys are just not as, and again, this is like a big thing online. It's like people are like, oh, once you're in your 30s, you're used up. Nobody's ever going to want you again. I do not agree with that at all. No. I think that a lot of dudes need to get the fuck over themselves and start getting married, start having kids, start being, look, if you're going to do this neo-trad thing, try to find the truth in it and understand that you have to be forgiving, trad stuff. I mean, at the true base, when it's real, like that 50s furniture, it's based in America, Christianity. And a big part of that is forgiveness. It's redemption. You need forgiveness and redemption. You are not perfect. This is something that Matt Erickson said on that podcast I did with them. Most women by their 30s have, maybe been with 50 guys, but most guys by the time they're 30 have watched like 10,000 hours of pornography, so you're not whole after that. You have your own damage.
Yeah.
You're not better than these people. Now, that being said, you don't have to go out and marry a woman who just quit OnlyFans, but like, to be honest, there's more women doing that kind of thing than ever before, but there's still not that many women doing it. Most of the women you bump into and have a chance of dating are not doing OnlyFans.
Right.
Now, have they maybe fucked a bunch of guys? That's a possibility. May you have to marry a woman who already has kids? Yeah, you might have to. Yeah, that's very likely in the world we live in now.
Yeah.
But you need to fucking get over it, because otherwise you're a genetic dead end. That's one thing Andrew says to women on whatever. It's like you're girl bossing yourself into being a genetic dead end. No, you're not going to have any kids. You're not going to have anyone to take care of you when you get older. You're not going to have anything. All this stuff that is meaningful to you now is going to be gone.
Yep.
And you're not, and men are doing the same things. It's like, I need, the 18-year-old virgin wife. It's like, she's not going to be with you, dude. You're a 35-year-old, you're a 37-year-old metal shop worker. You're not bagging the tens,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first thing I want to say about, this idea that people are used up and nobody wants them by the time they're in their 30s, especially talking about that from, looking at women specifically. I think this applies both to men and women, but I mean, there's no doubt about it that a young woman is beautiful in ways that, an older woman is starting to be less beautiful. There's just no doubt about it. However, if you had the choice, I'll ask all of the men listening to this right now, if you had a choice right now to date a super hard body 20-year-old girl, or a 35-year-old girl who's, hot, but not that hot, who's starting to go, going down the other side of the mountain, but she's had enough life experience to be fucking interesting, to hold a conversation with you, depends
on what you want, man. Because 35 he's getting kind of old to have kids. And if
Oh, for
that's
sure.
what's important to you,
But I'm just saying, when you're trying to see, when somebody, not you, when somebody's trying to suggest that a woman in her 30s is no longer valuable, what I'm suggesting is, in many ways, a woman in her 30s is far better than.
yeah. I mean, again, it just depends on what you're looking for. You know,
How about a conversation?
a conversation is good, but
You gonna have a conversation, a meaningful conversation with an 18-year-old?
I think you could. I don't think that that's impossible, to be honest with you. You like,
No, it's
you
not
say
possible.
that,
It's not possible.
You
No.
feel that way because of the way that women are, you know, like we've been talking about. Shit's out of control, but women are smart, man. They're not smart in the same way that men are.
I'm not
but
saying,
even when they're young, they can think, you know.
I'm not saying not smart. I'm just saying,
Vapid.
yeah.
I don't think that has to be the case.
When you're young, and like I said, this is on both sides. I'm not just saying women.
Yeah.
Try having a conversation with an 18-year-old knucklehead dude. You know, try it.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a good time.
I've had like at my jobs, I've talked to young people. They're smart, man. Sometimes
I'm not saying they're not smart.
Yeah,
they're smart. They can be fucking rocket scientists, but they don't have life experiences. They don't have stories. That they don't get your references. They can't empathize with you.
Mean.
I just don't. They haven't been divorced. They haven't.
I don't think that's all of them, and I think that it could be even less of them if we like tweak culture a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I worked at my main job. I work with this guy. I don't work with him anymore. He moved on. It sounds like he died. And he was like 22 to 24, somewhere in that area.
Yep.
And he was so smart. Now, granted, he was very liberal, you know, but that being said, I don't agree with him on a lot of that kind of stuff, but he's obviously very smart,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you know, he could have his mind changed. And I like talking to people.
See, that's another
about that kind of stuff, even if I don't agree with them.
That's another good example.
They don't always like talking to me.
If you're talking to somebody young,
mm-hmm.
It's far easier to change their mind. The naivete and the gullibility and and how easily persuaded they are. That's another reason why, like I'm just saying, a quality conversation, a quality friendship, a relationship, I think is far more likely with a 30-something-year-old than a barely legal, is all I'm saying.
Sure. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, because I am not saying that women who are older, they become valuable in different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
Yeah. But if you are looking to have kids, that factors in, and that is an undeniable factor. And so even if a man is in, you know, about approaching 40, up into more aged than that, if they decide late in life that they want to have kids, I don't think there's anything wrong with them wanting to be with like a woman who's 20 if she's into it.
No.
They're both adults.
No, it's not. There's not. And it changes. There's an age at which what I'm trying to describe becomes much less of a problem. Maybe like around 25.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a sexy question.
What the fuck?
Let me ask you. So we're pretending like it was just you and I having this conversation. So let me ask you a sexy question. So the young girls, like while we were having this conversation, I was thinking about an older fella and a younger girl, you know, legal situation, but there being a good difference in age between them. And I kind of see this as like a student-teacher dynamic.
Mm.
And that's part of maybe what I'm getting to, where I feel a little icky about that. Like if I was trying to imagine dating a younger girl, this student teacher dynamic, it's like, this is what I mean when I say I want to ask you a sexy question. In the bedroom, in this scenario where you have a younger girl and a much older guy, he's going to be teaching her, right? Especially if she's a virgin, this girl. I think we can make the argument that a more experienced broad is going to be way more fun. I
don't. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, I know. I honestly don't know where you're going to fall on this. I know you have a bit of a contrarian nature, but I wasn't sure where you would fall on this. again, I know this is sort of a petty thing to bring up, but like I said, when we're talking about people who suggest that someone in their 30s is used up, in that regard, I think you can argue the sex is going to be better.
I don't know, man.
Something about being in that student teacher dynamic with a girl that I'm, into being intimate with. Like, icky is the word that comes to mind, Kyle. I don't know what else to say. It's like if I have to see, now I'm just thinking that grandma's listening. What I'm saying here is if I have to tell you to cradle the balls, right? If I have to tell you that, you should know. You should just know.
What is you? Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, first of all, I don't really think. I think that probably due mostly to porn. Like not just men and women have this like desensitized kind of like just like sex has to be like porn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, man. Sex is still pretty good, it's just like normal sex.
The best.
It's actually kind of good,
It's the best. Yeah.
So like there's that aspect of it. Like people just, I want to say that they like expect too much or they need too much. And we could definitely, with some tweaks to society, some tweaks to culture, we could fix that a little bit. And I also think that I don't understand why that makes you feel the ick.
Boy, it just makes me feel like one person is an adult and one person is a child. It just makes me, if I feel like I am the experienced one and I'm teaching you and you're walking around blind like Helen Keller, not knowing what to do, it's icky. It's fucking icky to me. I don't like it. I don't know why. I'm just telling you how I feel.
Yeah, I don't feel it. I mean, it doesn't bother me. Like they have to, like the women that get to be 35 had to learn it somehow.
I know, and you don't ask those questions, Kyle. You never ask those questions.
But that's like, it would be better if they just didn't learn it. You know what I mean? And then I almost feel like learning it from your husband, regardless of how old he is better than getting run through by like 14 guys. And then you know how to, I'm like, where is your grandma?
Listen, I don't disagree with you at all. Really. I understand the point you're making. Also, I have a incredibly deficient sense of imagination sometimes, and like what I'm suggesting to you here is that there's been times in my life where what she's learned, I never would have been able to suggest. Like this never would have occurred to me. You learn this from somebody else. I understand that. I'm not ever going to bring it up, but. If it was just you and I don't think I ever would have taught this to you. You know what I mean? Like wouldn't have occurred, not butthole stuff, Kyle.
Oh man, I get you. And then that like damages your ego a little bit. You're like, oh,
it does.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Where did she learn this?
Where did she learn this? I was listening to a comedian. I want to say it's that terrible lady comic that's on Joe's podcast like every 7 years.
Whitney Cummings.
Yeah. I think it was her. But she was some woman comic was talking about the dating.
So not funny.
Talking about the dating world now, as they do. Women comics talk about the dating world, and she mentioned something about porn. She was like, "What is it? I'm dating now. It's like every guy's expecting you to gag. Every guy's expecting you to make that noise." And I'm thinking to myself, you're 100% right. Like that didn't exist. Listen, I've watched porn back in the 90s. I've seen some of the history of it, and there are fads in it. The cross-eye peace sign thing from fucking hentai that never existed before, you guys. The gagging and throwing up thing did not exist. Yeah. Do you think that's an ego thing? The gagging, it's like, It's
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Explain.
This is so large that I can't help but to almost throw up on you.
Oh, I got you.
You think it's like a, sorry, Grandma. Sorry. God.
I think it's the ego is probably a big part of it,
Because I want to know whose idea was it.
I think it's based on a lot of things, I don't think it's just one. Like, honestly, I think I've been kind of chewing on this theory, and I don't think it's anything new. I think it's just something that's popped into my head kind of spontaneously on its own. But I think it's an idea that's out there, is that porn kind of makes men dislike women. You know, it's like you see it and you see them as objects, and you see them as these disgusting like sex toys. You know what I mean? And
well, it's hard to respect somebody when you see him do that over and over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. The problem is that it doesn't just get contained to the porn stars. It like starts to bleed out into all women, you know?
Do you feel that has happened to you?
Like disliking women?
Like that it seeps out into your relationships with the way you see other people?
Yeah, when I was younger, for sure. I think that I didn't have a healthy view of women. Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always been able to separate those things. I think it's a fiction, fantasy thing, but I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that much.
Well, I mean, like kind of a running theme or joke through our friendship is that you're like the constant white knight, the constant good guy. It is hard for you. It's hard for you to think of women like that, for sure. And that's been a thing forever. It's like, I don't know the best way to describe it. You've always been a real nice guy. Yeah. I have not always been that nice of a guy. Yeah. I try to be nice now.
That whole thing I brought up earlier about, someone cutting me in line and my instinct just being to let it go. Mm-hmm. Like it goes along with that whole white knight thing. But I'm starting to get to a point in my life where I feeling some pressure from myself, I think, not from anybody else, from myself to be less like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Maybe I feel like it's necessary. There's too many people taking advantage of too many people. And it's not safe to be that trusting and to be that optimistic anymore.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Maybe it wasn't that safe ever. And I've just been super naive.
I think it was safe at one point. Excuse me. To trust more when we were now everyone's so self-centered, not everyone, there are still lots of nice people out there.
Well, this whole thing,
I try not to give into the negative everything is shit, because it's not. There are lots of great people out there.
Yeah.
So
this thing about people being more self-centered than they used to be, I think that might mean less communal. You know what I mean? Like we used to consider other people because our lives were more about other people, and now our lives are more and more about only us.
Yeah. Welcome to the Enlightenment and classical liberalism. I mean, it has its good things, but it completely rips everyone apart too. It atomizes everything, and that's not good.
So this is something that comes up in the religious exercise for me. This individualism versus collectivism, it shows up in other ways too. But for me, I was just talking about this when I did the episode on Orthodoxy and the religion of the future. He talks a lot in that book about spiritual experiences. Mm-hmm. And I don't think by that he means mystical experience, but mystical experience would be one of those types of spiritual. It would be in that category.
Yeah.
But there's other things in that category. He was talking about shamanism and pagan religions and how they offer spiritual experiences, but mm-hmm. they're all unequivocally either some sort of evil thing that's happening or some sort of psychological trickery, mm-hmm. and they can't be anything else. But I have a really strong objection to this, because I think that shamanism and the spiritual experiences that were part of that I think shamanism is the most ancient. It's associated with the most ancient form of spirituality and religion. It's associated with animism, this belief that the world is imbued by spirits, and all of our ancient ancestors from all over the world had some worldview like this in our deep prehistory. And they took psychedelic substances and or aesthetic rituals and or sensory deprivation or sleep deprivation or whatever they had to do to induce these spiritual experiences. And the shamans did that for healing reasons. They did that for psychological reasons. They did that for, prophesying, whatever. They did that for all kinds of stuff. I think shamanism and those sorts of spiritual experiences are the origin of religion.
I don't.
I would love to hear more about that, but let me try to finish this.
I thought you were finished. You gave a pause. So.
Yeah. Well, the point is that he shits all over this idea of shamanism. I was going somewhere else with this, but go ahead. Tell me what your objection is to this idea of shamanism.
I think that Christianity is the root of religion. And I think that everything else came after it, regardless of how it seems throughout history. I mean, one theme through this podcast is that history's been all twisted up. I have no fucking idea how things really happened. And I think that everything else came after Christianity, the truth of how the world was created and God and all of that. And that everything that came after is some kind of a corruption of the truth.
Okay. So I love this. I want to dive deeper into this idea, but
I mean, I can't go, but go ahead.
Well, the audience, at least some part of the audience or some part of the audience's brains saying Jesus was born in 6 BC or whatever. Yeah. So there was the majority of human history when there was no Christ. And so there was no Christianity.
What is the significance of that? No. Christianity, that's what I'm trying to from Genesis forward is Christian. I mean, the Bible story from Genesis forward is Christianity.
And the Jews would disagree, of course.
So who cares?
They would say, no, it was Judaism. It was Judaism until...
But we have the fulfillment of it.
Yeah.
And they're still waiting.
So the logic here is something like, and correct me if I'm wrong. We've had this conversation before. I'm just leading into this. The logic here is something like the Christian reading, the Orthodox interpretation, as Friar Rose says over here.
Friar Rose.
Okay, we'll touch on that in a second. Yeah. Where was I going? What did I just say?
You were talking about me saying that everything else is a corruption, and the logic behind it.
The logic behind it is the Christian interpretation of the book of Genesis. So the Christian interpretation is that in the beginning was the Word, and that Word was the Logos, and that is Christ, yes. Right? And so the Jews who practiced that faith until the birth of Christ didn't realize that. Right? That's the argument. They didn't realize that the Logos was Christ. I'm just putting that out there because there's a bunch of people that will hear you say Christianity is the origin of religion, and they're going to say that shit. They're going to say all that shit. Mm-hmm. They're going to say Christ wasn't born until 6 BC. They're going to say, right, I'm just putting it out there because there's going to be some people thinking that.
Yeah,
so
that's okay.
So there's a similar way in which Muslims talk. They say Islam, that Jesus was Muslim. They say that Jesus was a Muslim. Abraham was a Muslim.
It's nicer than the thing the Jews say about him.
Oh, dude, I know this is off track, but I saw this clip of
is it about Jews?
Jewish people in Jerusalem, mm-hmm. And they were being asked if you had to pray and you had the choice between praying in a mosque or a church, which would you prefer? What do you think they said?
They'd rather die. They'd rather burn in hell. I don't know.
Every single one said they would rather pray in a mosque. Some of them said, well, they probably wouldn't let me in, but they said the Christians don't worship the same God as us. The Muslims do.
That's my point.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely.
That's my entire point.
This
and they do not like Christians, dude. Like it's that's why all of this shit with Iran right now. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
I figured you did. It's hard not to know, but all of that stuff, and America wanting, like, all of these fucking boomers on X are like, we need to stand up for Israel. It's like, get the fuck out of here, man. I do not care. I don't care one way or the other about Gaza or Israel. I don't want to go to war with Iran. That doesn't seem like a good prospect.
No.
It seems like knocking on the door of World War III.
Yeah.
I don't. And they admit it themselves. They don't worship the same gods as us. So why is this like boomer evangelist Protestant? What is this obsession with Israel? It's got to go. And it is going. Like a lot of the people who are in power right now, it's not going away with them. But the people coming up, it's slipping.
Yeah.
Israel is in 20 years is not going to be in a good position unless they can really shift the deck.
Yeah. So I think that nationalism is a strange component to this whole Israeli topic, because I think Christians would support Jews to some level because Jesus was a Jew. So I think Christians would support Jews at some level for that reason. Historically, I realize that's a sketchy statement to make, but I think
based on what you just said about they don't worship the same gods, they don't like us, dude. Like we have this kind of imagined need to be loyal to them because Jesus was a Jew. The Jews, the bloodline, the religion, they are not important. We are the new Israel. Christians are the new Israel. They are welcome, but it's not them. It's not the landmass. It's not those people.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I think about those commercials, they're not public service commercials. They're charity commercials. You know what I mean? It's like the old lady in the Eastern Bloc country, Jewish lady with her hair wrapped up, and she's starving, and you buy the box of Passover food and you send it to the Jewish person in some poor country. You know those commercials? Yeah. It's like those ASPCA commercials, but instead of cats, they're elderly Jewish people. Yes, yeah, exactly. So like that's like a super common part of American culture. Like, that's on par with the ASPCA commercials, which is fucking weird. Human beings and cats with one eye that we're comparing, but it's the truth. But Zionism is a different thing, and like I said, it's like associating Jewish people with a nation. It's like that's you put too many ingredients in the mix at this point. There's too much going on. You can't separate, the wheat from the chaff. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I'm going with that, but the point is nationalism. It's like associating Jewishness not with a race, but with a nation. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for that, would Americans support Israel at all? I don't know. Because it's like a strategic thing for us to have a partner there in that part of the world.
Yeah. I mean, we could be partners with other people.
Yeah, we could.
We're partners with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is pretty supportive of Israel too. But look, I get that. And like I said, we could be partners with other people. We could be allies with other countries over there.
Doesn't make any sense to me, Kyle, that an Orthodox Jewish person would rather pray in a mosque with people over there.
You need to look
people over there that from the view we receive,
you're gonna have to watch them
hate each other and want to kill each other.
You're gonna have to watch some stuff that's gonna give you that ick that you talk about.
Oh no!
Because like it should give you some inclination of the kind of stuff that you're going to have to learn by what you said, that they supposedly hate each other. They supposedly hate these Muslims and Arabs around them, but they would rather pray with them than with us. And it speaks a lot to how they really feel about Jesus and how they really feel about Christians. And interesting. They'll be nice to you. I mean, again, going down the old anti-Semitism road. And I'm not anti-Semitic. Jewish people are fine. Like 99% of Jewish people are just fine. I do think that even the ones who are fine, like they they don't really like Christians that much, Again, they'll be nice to your face, but they're like, they think Jesus is boiling in a pit of feces. Feces. That's the Greek pronunciation.
Feces. Boy, that's interesting, man. It is interesting to ask myself, why would these one after the next of these Jewish people being interviewed said, I would rather go into a jihadist mosque than go into a Christian place of prayer? It's like, what?
They spit on Christians walking through the streets all the time. It's like a well-known thing.
What?
Christians will be walking through the street.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, dude.
I'm surprised more tourists don't get thrown in jail for fistfights over there.
Dude, all the tourists who go over there are these fucking cucked boomers who like they're Jew cucks. It's like they just love they could get spit on by they think it's like a baptism. It's like some kind of baptism. It's pathetic, man. The evangelical boomer tendency to like support Israel at all costs is so stupid and so misguided. I can't stand it, and it's gonna get us pulled into World War III. I think that a huge portion of the population does not want to go to war to support Israel in any way. Some people do for sure, but we will. We will if something goes like that missile attack by Iran. We were involved in defending. I mean, that's defense, so whatever. But when it starts to get to offense, we'll be there.
Boy, scary shit, man.
Yeah, man, it's not good. There's a lot of fucked up stuff going on. It's going to be an interesting election, man.
It's going to be a very interesting.
I don't think Biden's got a leg to stand on if they don't cheat. And
I told my father that earlier today. I said, if Biden wins this election, I will have zero faith in the elections going forward forever. Like it would be the last straw. There's no possible way.
He doesn't have a single issue that he has like a good position on compared to Trump.
And that's a scary thing, dude. If first of all, if Biden were to win, there's a lot of people who think along the lines that I just said, that if he pulls it off, especially off by some like bullshit, there's a ton of people, even if it's legit, a ton of people that are going to be calling bullshit, and they're not going to answer, just like they didn't answer last time. There was questions.
Yeah, I think a lot of like these same boomers are like, if it happens, we're going to civil war, and I don't believe that will happen. I really don't. But I do think that trust in the institutions will be eroded more and more and more. And I think that is actually way, way better of a situation for us than civil war. Because if the faith in the institution gets eroded, it's like easier to step into control. You know what I mean? And that's what we need to do. We need to step into control, and we need to keep control, and we need to circulate some people, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think if Biden wins and there's a tremendous amount of people who think that it was illegitimate, that we might see, I'm not sure that we'll see civil war. I'm not ruling it out. I think we could see some bad things protest wise, but I think we may see something like Brexit. We may have a real Texit. We may have a real serious conversation about places like Texas seceding, maybe whole sections of the United States succeeding in a smaller group. Can you imagine like the New England states just saying, the liberals over here on the East Coast are just going to be our own country now, and it's going to be us in California, you know?
More power to them. Hopefully it works out for them.
Yeah, I don't think it would work out too well. It'd be well. I won't go any further. The religion of the future. I want to get back to Friar Rose.
Friar Rose.
All right. So first of all, guys, I want to say I did an episode just most recently, a solo episode on Orthodoxy and the religion of the future. This little tome right here. You see right here where it says, right here it says Fr. Seraphim Rose. I'm not a Catholic. I am not an Orthodox. I grew up an evangelical Protestant. I have no effing idea. You know what? The priests were? We didn't have priests. We had somebody's dad who fucking got paid almost nothing to preach on Saturdays once a week.
Called him pastor.
He was a pastor. He fucking went to Bible college online.
Maybe.
I don't know what a fucking friar is, but FR seems like it's an abbreviation for friar. I know that Seraphim Rose was a fucking priest.
Mhm.
So when I did the episode on the book, I kept calling him Friar Rose, which sounds like it's not now. It sounds like something out of a fucking King Arthur cartoon or something.
Yeah, it's from Robin Hood. Friar. I mean, it's
Friar Tuck.
Friar Tuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Apparently, FR is the abbreviation for father. Thank you for letting me know.
After.
Shout out to Jason Moranchek for also letting me know.
So I was listening when I saw it. I was like, "Ooh, I want to listen to this." I'm still not all the way through it. I think I've got like 20 minutes left. But yeah, the first time I heard you say it, I was just
oh,
like, "Oh,
this
no."
guy.
Because I knew that you were going to say it many more times through the episode.
Yeah. So so
go Friar Rose.
First of all, it's funny. Secondly, my biggest fear is that level of small, meaningless mistake will make me lose credibility in the ears of any like knowledgeable person who's actually interested in listening to what I might have to say about the book. And the thing is, I have lots of interesting things to say about the book. And it took me 2 hours to talk about this book.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time reading it, going through my notes, paring it down, coming up with the tale that I wanted to tell, figuring out what was important. It was a very well researched and thought out position. But then I undercut the whole thing by calling him Friar.
You know what
Rose.
you should do?
What?
You know how you do the video editing to put that clip in the front?
Mm-hmm.
You should record something and be like, I didn't know. I'm not ortho. So basically what you just said, like a more measured, like even version of what you just said, explaining, and then just clip that right into the front of it. Be like, warning. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I will. Probably won't, but maybe I will.
Yeah.
But the point is that Father Seraphim Rose, I call him fucking Friar Rose the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I could have easily just called him Father Rose if I'd known, but I didn't. I think I actually did, by the way, but it just didn't occur to me when I was like whatever research I did before I started reading the book, it was just fucking not even available to me. Anyway, so the book. I said in the podcast I did on it, and I told you that when I first heard about the book, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, I made an assumption about what the book was going to be about. I thought it was going to be about Orthodoxy being the religion of the future. I thought this priest was going to argue that here's all the reasons why Orthodox Christianity is poised to be the religion of the future. And I had all kinds of things in my head that I thought might be the reason for that. But I talk about theosis, as you brought that up earlier, as being one of the things that I think doctrinally is missing from the Christianity that I had.
Western Christianity.
Yeah. And also some of the things he says in this book about, and some of the things you acknowledged when you first started getting into Orthodoxy, how serious it is. Religion is serious business to them. And that gives it a whole different tone and power and weight, because the way that people behave surrounding it, the sacraments and all that. And so I can see Christianity that I grew up in missing a lot of important things that are present in Orthodoxy that I've not seen much of it, but enough that I thought Friar Rose was going to come in here and say, look, guys, you want your religion to have substance. You want it to have fire. You want it to be alive. You want it to inspire and possess you. You want it to be something that, like Jordan Peterson would say, glitz and glimmers like the golden snitch, something that pulls your attention towards it. That's what religious people call a calling. Religion is supposed to call to you, Yep. And
it did for me, like just to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, please.
When I first started, I used to be pretty much an atheist, and then, we got into the psychedelics, and that like opened my mind to everything is not as it seems. All of this matter, that's not all that there is, that like opened me up to that concept.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Peterson played a part in getting me to appreciate the biblical stories again.
Yes.
And it just kind of like snowballed from there. And I said this on the podcast on 2-Bit the other day, like I knew just from like life experience that living a Christian life, living by that moral and ethical standard is the best recipe for a functional, healthy society. And that's kind of where I left it. Like I was still thinking materially, I'm still thinking
Pragmatically.
We just plugged all these things in, you know, and everything will be good.
Yeah.
But it like things were still not like working out for me. I was still not happy. You know, and it occurred to me that I was missing the point, you know, what made it real. I was not accepting. I was rejecting that part of it. And I was like, at that point when I had that realization, it was like, I was like flirting with the idea of believing, you know, I was like going to my parents' church. And then one day, again, on my way back home from work, from my lunch break, I just like broke down a little bit, man. Like I had a little bit of a, you know, like a bit of a mood, as people say, as the youngins say.
Yep.
And yeah, I just had that realization. It's like, oh no, I'm missing the real point of it, you know? And that's when I started going to the Orthodox church. And
can you describe that more? What you think the point was that you were missing?
The acceptance of Christ, the acceptance of it as real, you know, not pragmatic, not a recipe for an outcome, but the truth of the reality of the world.
Now, do you think, boy, is it something like you have to exercise faith? Like you decided,
it's
like
a huge part of it.
Like there's a lot of things here that there's a big chunk of my psyche that's telling me this is dumb and, you know, this isn't logical and this is magic nonsense. And you have to come to the point where you say, I choose to have faith anyway.
Yep. And part of it, it's like you have all of these presuppositions about religion and how it's silly. Like if you believe in it literally, it's good ideas, you know, like the basic principles are good.
Yeah.
But, you know, you think that if you believe it literally, you're silly, you know, those presuppositions, you are taking those on faith too. You have no reason to believe those things.
Yeah.
You think that you do, but it's all the same it's the same type of presuppositions, just like stacked on top of old presuppositions, you know? And I think sometimes I say that you'd be surprised what you can make yourself believe. And I think that like might rub people the wrong way. It's like, oh, what you can make yourself believe, like you're lying to yourself. But no, it's like, you'd be surprised what you can believe if you're willing to believe that like you've been lied to your entire life and, you know, and things are different, you know, that history is not the way that people have been laid it out for you. And that the truth of spirituality is not the truth of how people have laid it out for you. That there's an alternative.
Yeah.
And that accepting that alternative is not any more silly than accepting the original presuppositions.
So if you don't mind, let's go back to this shamanism, spiritual experience through shamanism thing. So if we believe the angle that you brought up earlier, which is that Christ is the Logos, was there from the beginning. So
Logos.
Okay. So religion is Christianity, basically, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Doesn't that mean that the shaman, the prehistoric shaman who's out there, you know, interacting with the spirits and God, was worshiping the Christian God?
Nope, not necessarily. I'm not a theologian. It's hard for me to answer these kinds of questions, but if you aren't, so I think that there's something to be said for like pre-Christ. I still don't think, I still think that it's a corruption of the truth, but you know, like those people are so far removed from the truth that they think that it is the truth. And, you know, like Job in the Bible, Job was not, you know, from what I understand, Job was not a Hebrew person. He was a Gentile who got it right, who like somehow managed to maintain the traditions. It's like, there's a story, I think it's in Kings. It's about Josiah, King Josiah, and several of his ancestors before him had like let the Hebrew people get out of control. Like they were worshiping idols for so long that they didn't even remember Christianity. They didn't even remember the true faith. and some kind of like monks found some scrolls and brought them to Josiah, and he's like, you know, mind blown. I can't believe this. And he like reinstates, you know, the true faith. And I think it's like that with those people, you know, they've lost it and they didn't have the scrolls. You know what I mean?
There's a couple of passages that Father Seraphim Rose brings up in that book from the Old Testament that he uses as evidence that the Christian God is not the same God as the God of the Jews and Muslims.
Mm.
And what he does is he uses King David and he uses Daniel maybe and somebody else where there's passages where they refer to the Son of Man, and even one passage where it says that the Son of Man was there with the Ancient of Days. So here you have an Old Testament person, a Hebrew, a Jew, having a revelation where there is separately the Son of Man and the Ancient of Days, the Father and the Son. And I never heard that argument before. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder how the Jews make sense of that. And I could probably find out because there's, you know, Orthodox Jews close in my, you know, circles. I could ask them that question. I wonder how they make sense of that.
Call up Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, I want to call up Ben Shapiro. Absolutely. I would be very interested to hear what Ben Shapiro, how they make sense of that.
Yeah. So like why they don't accept that Christ is the Son?
Or how they explain away the fact that this Old Testament person who's important to them in their faith describes God in this fractured manner where there's two personages, the Son of Man and the Ancient of Days, appearing in a revelation. I'm sure they have an explanation of who the Son of Man is. It's not Jesus. I just wonder what that is.
I think that they think it's the coming Messiah who they believe who has not come yet.
Interesting. Yeah, that could be that. Yeah.
That you know, again, I'm not a theologian. I'm a lay person. I'm very lay.
Yeah.
But that would be my guess. And why they don't accept Christ, I think that on some level, it's almost like they're incapable of it. But it's not that they're incapable of it, because some of them do. You know, Andrew Clavin, he's a Jew who's a Christian now. But so from what he's going to kind of political, who's going to like have them take control of the world, basically.
Yeah.
You know, like rescue them and bring them to their full glory, you know, and Jesus didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus's mission was much more humble than that, which is important.
And I will say that the military conqueror, coming in savior type of character, Muhammad was a much closer match.
And they want to pray in their churches.
And they want to play in there. So I want to give you this thought experiment. I was trying to talk about shamanism earlier and like an ancient prehistoric person. So let's just think about this prehistoric person for a second. You know, he's like a caveman. He lives in, you know, 60,000 years ago. He lives up in the fucking Basque country or something in the mountains.
Yep.
He's out there by himself. He's
it's like proto Ted Kaczynski.
He's trying to find shelter. You know, he can't find food. He's starving. Maybe he's injured. He's in a bad place, and he breaks down, and he kind of gives up for a second, and he's in this prayerful, begging, pleading kind of a state of mind, just trying to put something out there that's like a common human experience. So we can grab a hold of that, and you know, what would we do in that situation? We'd say, you know,
please help me.
God help me. Please help me. Yeah, something like that. And he has an out-of-body experience. He has something like the Native Americans talk about having when they get their spirit guides or whatever, something like that. He has one of these shamanistic experiences because he hasn't eaten, because he's exhausted, because he's prayerful, all that sort of thing. And he goes into this realm of psyche, like we talked about from psychedelic experiences or whatever. And he comes back from it thinking there's a reality to experience, to the world, that I am completely unaware of, that's invisible to me. There is some spiritual shit out there that's a part of this reality that until now I had no idea about. And now this person believes they have had an authentic experience of something spiritual.
Yeah.
Maybe they encountered an entity and they believe they had a revelation of God. My question is, Friar Rose says, no, this guy has had a demonic experience. And I can't see that. I think this guy has had a legitimate experience, whether it's the full peak, spiritual experience that the Christian sacraments offer, maybe not. But God damn it, quit it. But it's something genuine and authentic. It's not demon possession.
I don't know, man. What are you basing that on?
It's some like basic logical premises that maybe Orthodox Christians don't hold. Some of them, I talk about this a little bit in the podcast I did. It's some of it is a what I call a radical monotheism.
Yeah.
That God is one, not many. So any encounter of,
but God is one and many.
Yes, true. And I believe that, and it's hard to square that circle because I think it's a paradox on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I think God is one, and I think that means any experience of spirit is an experience of God. So any religious person anywhere in the world, at any point in time, who has an experience of the spirit.
I think that there's some I don't mean to interrupt.
No, just to put a finer point on that anybody who's had an experience of the divine, the spiritual, supernatural, that is the only divine spiritual thing that there is to experience.
Yeah. I mean, I see why you think that because of your presuppositions, and I mean, you can say that mine are just presuppositions too, and you're not wrong, but based on those presuppositions, we come out with very different opinions on it. I do think that there's some truth in that all spiritual experience is from God, but I don't think that those spirits are God. I think that they're God's creation, undoubtedly, because everything is. But I do think that there are spirits, and I think that they have free will in the same way that we do.
So I have for a very long time pushed back against that idea. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to think it's true, but recently I have to ask myself honestly how I feel about myself and other human beings ontologically. What I feel like I am is a embodied, manifest, incarnate. I am God incarnated, as everything is. And for me to suggest that it's impossible that God could be incarnated in some other way that's invisible to me, but similar enough to me to have free will and something, it's like there's some logical inconsistencies. I cannot say that that's impossible, but something about my intuition thinks it's wrong. I don't. That's about as far as I can go. Yeah. It could very well be that if I am God incarnate, that there are other incarnations. I think the earth, the animals, the fucking subatomic particles, they're all incarnations of God. So is it possible that there are others out there like angels and demons? It has to be.
Yeah.
But I don't like it. I don't know.
It gives you the ick.
It's not icky. It just seems like it seems blasphemous in one way, and it seems like it diminishes God.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I mean, it's like, again, I think it's just building off of presuppositions, and I'm not telling you that your presuppositions are wrong. I mean, I don't believe they are not my presuppositions. So obviously I don't think that they're correct completely, you know, but it's just like, I can't say you're wrong, and I don't think that you can say that I'm wrong,
No. So there was one particular thing he says in here that I think might be good for this conversation, where he's talking about, he says a lot of nasty things about Hindus, especially the Vedanta Hindus, which I particularly like.
Yeah.
So he says a bunch of shit like that. But one of the things he says is this is a guy, he's a Swami that came over to the United States in the 60s named Vivekananda, which is a name I've heard before, but I didn't really know why. But he explains to it, Vivekananda is one of these people that like popularized Vedanta in America. He says something in this book. You're smiling like maybe you know where I'm going.
No, I'm not.
He says something in this book that he's trying to. There's like some ad hominems in there where Father Rose actually does try to throw a couple of jabs. He tries to throw a couple of jabs, and one of the things he said is that that Swami Vivekananda said, Hindus are man worshippers. We believe all men are God, and we worship God as death. We're the only people brave enough to worship Kali, to worship God as death, to worship evil, right? That's kind of the way that he paints the picture. Like, look at how terrible the Hindus are. They said some shit like that. However, I think that there's some very profound shit in the idea that there isn't a difference between good and evil, that it's a human construct. Oh, I hate using that word because it sounds postmodern. It's a human idea. It's a human experience. It's an illusion of being a human.
Yeah. Just
like the manyness of the world is an illusion and the oneness is the truth. That's another Hindu perspective or Vedanta perspective. But is it possible to worship God, like understanding that God is everything, God is all, and to understand what that means is that there are nasty experiences that are possible, and that those things are God too. And some of that stuff's hard. Like we could talk about gross examples of rape and things and sin, and we could get into that conversation. And I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I'm going to say, yeah, it's hard to. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that's a experience of God. That's.
But it is
under that philosophy. It is, yes. So there's something wrong about it. I agree. There's something wrong about it. But there's also this idea of like, this is also postmodern. I don't know what I'm going to say it, like word salad. Like, you remember when Foucault said that it's good to be dirty and grow your hair long and dress like a woman? Well, some of the Hindus do that. They like there's temples filled with rats, and it's like you go there and you live in the filth, and you realize that God's creation is that too, and you have to be able to learn to see the beauty in the rat shit and in the, rabies and in the, it's like, right. It's like,
nah.
It's like, it's like if you're going to be in the world, you have to learn to see God in everything, even the disgusting. And there's something about that I'm like, I don't love it, but I can't really argue against it. I think with that Hindu philosophy that everything's God and all that, you can't really get around that.
Yeah, in my mind, that's like a reason to not believe it, to not take it seriously.
It's a reason to rethink what sin means, what sin is, maybe.
In what way?
Like, if human beings are God, like I'm going to suggest is the case, everything is God, and we can choose to do something terrible, something we would call sin or evil. That means that we have a responsibility that's different than a Christian generally thinks. We generally think we have a responsibility for our own behavior. And what I'm saying is, no. We have a responsibility for what God is. Is God the kind of thing that rapes? Is God the kind of thing? It's like we have a responsibility for defining what reality is. And that might be a more powerful reason not to do those sorts of things. If you're like, it's not just you that, you're a loner, nobody knows you, nobody cares about you. If you do something bad, you're just rationalizing that. If you do something bad, you're just a nobody. It doesn't matter. What if you're God? What if what you're doing is what you wish to be a rule for the world. If this is what Immanuel Kant said, it's like everything you do is a categorical imperative. Every moral act you're saying, if I steal, what I'm suggesting is it should be a rule that everyone can steal.
Yeah.
You know, if you rape somebody, you're saying, I think it should be a rule. And that's kind of like being God. You're playing God. You're saying, I think this is how it should be, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I like, is it possible to steal from yourself? Is it possible to grape yourself? You're not really supposed to say that word on YouTube.
Excuse me. Yeah.
I don't fucking, I think people are kind of annoying about that.
Yeah. I do like there's an intellectual part of my brain that's trying to give you an example to say, like, I might steal my future in some way by using my time poorly or whatever. Like I might have stolen from myself, but really what I mean is that if you steal from anybody, you're
rubber stamping that behavior.
In the Vedanta philosophy, you are stealing from yourself because there isn't a difference between you and the person you're stealing from. You're identical. You're both God incarnate.
How is that stealing from yourself, though? If it's you and you are you, it's not stealing.
Yeah. So I think there is a interpretation of that mystical experience that is what you just described. That's that solipsism sort of thing. It's like, if I'm God, then why can't I do whatever I want? Why isn't the world mine only? What do I care about consequences? I'm God. There's that potential.
Yeah.
And then there's the correct, in my opinion, the correct potential, which is to say, being God doesn't make me special. It makes me common. It makes me just like everybody else. It's a humbling experience. And I know that doesn't exactly answer your question, but if I were to say that I steal from somebody who is me, I haven't really committed that crime. I haven't stolen anything. The thing goes from one pocket to the other pocket, right? It's not really stealing. But in reality, it's not going from my left pocket to my right pocket. It's going from your left pocket to my right pocket.
Yeah.
You know?
So I know you say that is the way that you see it is the correct way to see it. And the other way is the wrong way to see it. But would you say that, like, the spirit of the age, that old chestnut we keep going back to recently, would you say that the spirit of the age is interpreting that in the way that you think it, or the way that you think is the incorrect interpretation? Because it seems and to, like, you were talking about like the individualization and like the atomization of society. I think that kind of thinking plays a big part in that. I think that kind of enlightenment era, it's like born out of that tradition. You know what I mean? And well, I don't think it leads to good things. And I know that you're saying that that's the incorrect way of looking at it, but I think that people are prone to interpreting it the wrong way. And it makes me wonder if the way that you see is valid. Like, is it a worthwhile way of thinking if people are it's like so easily corrupted? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
one good thing I think about having, like, Christianity having that structure. It's like, no, you can't think that.
Yeah, no. Father Rose makes that argument in the book, and I think it's a strong argument.
Does he really?
He makes the argument.
I have the book. I haven't read it yet.
The argument, I kind of get the feeling that it's true of Orthodoxy, but it's also true of Orthodox countries. Like it's true of Russia and the Eastern Europe. They protect tradition tooth and nail. Like, it seems really important to them because they see the value in the wisdom of our ancestors. And that's a Jordan Peterson line, basically. They really, really appreciate that people have lived and died many times before them and won hard-earned wisdom that in the case of Orthodox Christianity had to do with arguing theological points, with experiencing lives of the saints that were examples of things that they could benefit from.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of things that they talk about being the lives of the saints and the church fathers and the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And you would be a fool. You would be a fool to throw that away because you want to do something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you are throwing away the baby with the bathwater.
So my question for you about that is, why do you think the rejection of that attitude that the East has, why do you think the rejection of that happened in the West? Like, why were we so willing to get rid of that kind of stuff and adapt and change? Because you're right, allowing that change, it's just going to ruin what you have.
It's going to ruin what you have
And
sooner or later, but it's going to ruin what you have.
I forget what the name of the law is, but it kind of like relates to the idea that any organization or institution that isn't inherently right wing will become left wing eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the reason the West let the traditions soften and eventually deteriorate, the only thing that really occurs to me is the idea that while novelty is dangerous, if you let it in, you never know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what happens is good.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the role of liberals in society, to allow for a little bit of openness, a little bit of experimentation.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
No. I was just saying I agree with you. It makes me think of something that I've heard Jonathan Pajot say, and Jason just referenced on that podcast I did with him, that like there's an order and we've disrupted the order. The order is that liberal thinking is on the outside. And we keep it there.
Yes.
And sometimes they develop the good things and it like works its way in. We allow that stuff in, but we keep the rest of it out.
That's so funny when you say that. I was thinking about the character Floki from Vikings.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
He's living out in the fucking woods.
Exactly. Those aberrant people in your society, that's usually they're artists and they're people that are fucked up and that aren't going to be really productive like normal people. But every now and then, they bring something so valuable to you that you have to keep those people around, because you never know what you're going to miss, but you keep them on the periphery. You don't let them.
And we've completely subverted that.
They're
in the heart of everything.
They're in the heart of everything. Yeah.
Yep.
You're right.
And like when I've heard Jonathan Pajot talk about that, he's like, we don't want to like round them all up, if you get my drift, you know, like that's not how we need to be thinking about it. We need to be thinking about it in that, those terms. Go over there, do your weird shit over there,
Right.
And when you do something good, we'll adopt that. Right. That's cultural appropriation.
We're at 2 hours, man.
Yeah.
I really felt like this conversation started picking up, and I'd like to just keep talking. I feel like my wife would probably give me shit if I do.
How long do you think we could go?
We could probably go like another 30 minutes, I bet.
It's up to you, man.
Let me think.
We could go another 10.
Let me think. Do I have anything? Oh, one other thing I wanted to touch on. Maybe we can do, unless you have something. I don't want to step on your toes.
No, I don't.
When I was talking about shamanism earlier, something I was trying to get to, but I lost because that's what was happening, is the individualism versus collectivism thing I started to talk about.
Yeah.
That idea of shamanism, that whole picture I painted to you about the person that was hungry, starving, injured, lost, I was trying to explain to you how spiritual experiences happen. They happen to people.
Yeah.
One at a time. It's an individual, personal experience every time. Even if you have a religious enlightenment, awakening experience in a like a collective environment, like in a church, in a prayer meeting, whatever it might be, the experience when it happens is not including anybody around you. It's I
don't know, man.
It's something that's happening to you personally.
I agree with you in the vast majority of them, and especially like a mushroom trip. That's you, know.
You.
But think about think about like that Orthodox liturgy you went with me to.
Mhm.
You know, it's like everyone is participating in a ritual. And I think being in a church and going consistently, you would start to feel that more,
Mhm.
that it is a ritual that you're participating in with other people. But I think a way that like really sells it is, and I mean, you know, Friar Rose would say that this is demonic, you know, but think about like the choreos, the berserkers around the fire, like, you know, working themselves into a frenzy.
Mhm.
It involves all of them. It's not an individual thing. They're a pack of wolves.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. When we bring up the liturgy that we went to together, I remembered the fella on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the guy who was just
Mhm.
prostrate on the ground for like 40 minutes with his head on the ground? He was with us, but that dude was having an experience. He was having a private, personal experience.
I mean, I see what you mean, and I particularly see how it seemed that way to you
Mhm.
because you weren't having that kind of experience. Neither was I. You know, I was like um, an outsider.
Yeah.
You know, but to the people who were in it, like he is, I don't know how they felt. You know, I think that we are commanded to fellowship together for a reason. You know, I think because it is a communal thing, and I mean, I think that there is still truth in what you're saying. It is a personal experience, you know, no matter how you break it down, there is a personal element to it.
Right.
But I think that there is a communal element to it too. And I think that that is part of one of those things you were talking about that's missing from Western Christianity. It's like you go, you say hi to everyone, you hang out in the front for half an hour, you have coffee, you go in,
Right.
you sing the songs,
Yeah.
you listen to the pastor give us, you know, the hour-long sermon.
Yeah.
And you sing some more songs, and then you go out to Chi-Chi's afterwards.
Yes, you do. Well, I told you one of the things that Father Rose said in the book that caught my eye was he was referring to the sacraments as mysteries.
Mm.
And I did a lot of studying and did episodes of the podcast about some of those ancient mystery religions that were existed right at the same time as Christianity. Some a little before and some after. But a lot of these mystery schools, these secret religious cults that existed in ancient history, and they had these rituals that people did, and they're all very secret. Nobody really knows what happened, but they created some sort of mystical experience that these people had that was life transforming. And even people like Plato, who academics respect the world over, was almost certainly an initiate of the Eleusinian mysteries. And so you have these experiences that are super profound and life changing. And I don't know what they were. I don't know what form they took, what people were really experiencing. But the idea that I could take communion, I don't even like using the word because communion, because I like the Eucharist and some of these more Catholic words. I like them better for some reason. But that I could take part in the sacraments, and in that process be having a spiritual experience in the order of the type that I call mystical. The idea that that might be possible is extremely alluring to me.
Yeah. Well,
it was never told to me. I was never told that this is a sacred ritual that you're participating in. It involves spirits, and if you do it properly, you'll have an experience. You'll have an experience of God, or you'll be closer to God, or you'll touch heaven, or whatever euphemism you want to use.
mm-hmm.
That it's possible that this experience could be like that. Nobody ever told me that.
Yeah, same. It was I remember I just recently shared this memory with you. I was like a very young child, and I asked my mom, like, how do we know that all of this stuff is real? You know? And she just said, you have to have faith. And back then, that was a lacking answer.
Yeah.
Now it's not so much a lacking answer.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. There's like, I see the importance in having faith. And I realized that all of the other positions that I have taken in my life have just been based on faith too, misplaced faith.
Yeah. And I hate to sully this part of the conversation with a callback to the dirtiest part of this podcast.
Grandma, close your ears.
Grandma,
turn it off.
Earmuffs.
It's over.
Earmuffs, Grandma. That naivete you just described about your mom said you have to have faith, and when you were young you thought that's a non-answer. But as an adult, you're like, well, there's something deeper in that she couldn't really communicate to me because at the time I wasn't ready to understand what that meant.
Yeah.
That it just goes back to that idea of trying to have a conversation with a naive young girl versus one with some experience.
Yeah.
That's a good way of.
I mean, I was much younger than 18, 20.
Yeah.
I was like single digits we're talking.
Well, but yeah, true. But even so, can you imagine explaining to a 19-year-old, boy or girl, doesn't matter, a 19-year-old, and them actually understanding what you understood when you were describing,
some of them. Yeah. Like I definitely see what you're saying. I take your point for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think maybe I just have like a little bit more faith in them than you do. And I think some of that probably has to do with my like podcast listening habits. Like I listen to this guy, Jay Burton. He's like 24 and he's like so much fucking smarter than I am.
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
He's like such an impressive kid. And I even feel bad calling him a kid because it seems like I'm condescending him. And I like Jay Burton is awesome. And there's like a bunch of people like that. Matt Erickson from Kingpill, his co-host Cooper, he's like 24.
Really?
And the kids just, again, I did it again. I feel bad doing it because I have respect for Cooper. Yeah. He's a smart person.
No, it's funny, man. There's some kids that I just call them kids there myself. Some younger kids that are kids that I work with professionally, like in the same age range, 22, 23, 24. And they were, and especially one of them in particular that I'm thinking about, an impressive fella.
Mm-hmm.
I would not think that he's naive in the way that I just described, blanketly described. Young, like a young bimbo.
But there is truth to your position. Like a lot of them are. Not everyone is equal. It's like that we talk about that a lot. It's like another one of those things that gives you the ick sometimes. We're not all equal.
We're not.
Some people have more of a capacity for that kind of understanding earlier. Some people never get that capacity for understanding, and I think that we cater to those people a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, me either, man. What are we going to call this episode?
I think we should call it the ick.
The ick?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, you got any closing remarks to close us out here, bud?
I mean, I just keep an eye out for new content. I think I'm going to have another interview coming this week with that fella Trey that I was talking about earlier. And then the week after that, I'm supposed to be talking to Typo, like the bullet test.
You're doing that. Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get myself out there. Like this week I ended up doing two things, like both kind of last minute. Like Andrew asked me to mod that debate like earlier that day. It was not a planned out thing at all.
It's cool that you were able to last minute to do that. I mean, it's good experience, but it's also kind of a favor, and it's just good to be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Andrew appreciated it. I could tell he was looking for a mod for this debate and, needed someone, but it's a favor to me too,
oh, for sure.
There were 2,000 people watching that stream at one point,
Very cool.
We picked up 8 followers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, dude.
All right. That leads me to subscribe.
Yep.
Share.
Do all the things.
Do the bells and the dingle dangles and all that stuff.
And follow us. We got our names up there.
You see those out there.
At Base Fat Chad is me. At Two Tongue Spot is Chris.
Two Tongue Spot.
Reach out. Tell us you wanna come on the show. I'll fucking talk to you, man. I'm talking to people.
Actually, so while we're on that subject, one of the things that I was hoping to do with my solo podcast is to just have a solo interview with people, either with unusual religious ideas or just people from other faiths, or not even other faiths, just other, other denominations. Like Daniel had a Mormon guy on. He's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, had a conversation with a Mormon guy. I think that's fucking cool. It's like the UFC of like,
theology.
Yeah, the UFC of theology. I love it. That's what I want to have a series. It's the fucking ultimate fighting of theology. Not. I don't really want to.
Sounds like the Crucible, which you are not.
I don't want to have an argument. I want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So if anybody's interested, I know there was one dude on Twitter that was a Zoroastrian that said he wanted to come on. I got to reach back out to that fellow.
Yeah, man.
So if you're interested, reach out to us. You can go to the website, the2tonguespodcast.com, or reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know.
Yep. Adios, people.
Peace.
Love you.